What?
Are you the Miracle Max who worked for the king all those years?
What if we told you one of the most beloved fairy tale films of all time was nearly derailed by real injuries, casting chaos, and even a literal fire? The Princess Bride might look like a perfect storybook adventure, but behind the scenes, things were far from magical. From near-fatal mistakes to improvised brilliance, this timeless classic has secrets even its biggest fans don't know. There's something about the Princess Bride that stays
and thank you
with
so
you.
much for bringing
Maybe
up
it's
such a
the blend
painful
of
subject.
fairy tale charm and self-aware humor, or maybe it's the simple idea that a story told with love can reach anyone, regardless of age. For many viewers, the film carries a tone of nostalgia and warmth rooted in memories of watching it as children, or discovering it later and being surprised by how smart and heartfelt it is. Before we go any further, here's your reminder to subscribe to our channel so you never miss out on your daily doses of TV bloopers. Bloopers. At its core, The Princess Bride is a story that plays with storytelling itself. Released in 1987 and based on William Goldman's novel of the same name, the film is structured around a grandfather reading a book to his sick grandson. This framing device sets the tone for what's to come. An adventure full of romance, sword fights, humor, revenge, and a bit of magic. The grandfather, played by Peter Falk, begins to read the story while his grandson, played by Fred Savage, remains disinterested at first. But as the tale unfolds, it pulls him in, much like it does the audience. The viewer follows the narrative not just through the events of the story, but also through the growing bond between the two characters sharing it. The story within the story begins in the fictional land of Florin, where a young woman named Buttercup lives a quiet life on a farm. She spends her days ordering around a farm boy named Wesley, who always replies to her with the same 3 words, "As you wish." Over time, Buttercup comes to realize that every time Wesley says those words, he's really saying, "I love you." The feeling is mutual, and their romance blossoms into something pure and strong. But this is a fairy tale, and no fairy tale is complete without hardship. Wesley sets off to make his fortune, promising he'll return for her. Unfortunately, Buttercup soon hears that his ship was attacked by the dread pirate Roberts, a feared figure known for never leaving captives alive. Believing Wesley is dead, Buttercup is devastated. She eventually agrees to marry Prince Humperdinck, a powerful nobleman with plans of his own. Buttercup's engagement leads to a chain of events that drive the rest of the plot. She is kidnapped by 3 men: Vizzini, a self-proclaimed genius, Inigo Montoya, a Spanish swordsman with a personal vendetta, and Fezzik, a gentle giant. Their plan is to frame a neighbouring country for Buttercup's murder to ignite a war, but their plan is interrupted by a masked man dressed in black who follows them across the landscape, defeating each of them one by one. As the story develops, it's revealed that the man in black is none other than Wesley, very much alive and determined to save Buttercup. His survival is explained through the identity of the dread pirate Roberts, which turns out to be a title passed down from one pirate to another. Wesley had assumed the role after proving himself, allowing him to live while adopting the feared name. One of the film's unique strengths is how it blends typical fairy tale tropes with smart, modern writing. It doesn't take itself too seriously, yet it respects the emotional weight of the story. The pacing shifts between humour and drama without feeling forced, helped along by well-timed dialogue and a cast that clearly understands the tone. As Wesley and Buttercup reunite, their journey becomes more dangerous. Prince Humperdinck, who planned to kill Buttercup all along, becomes a main threat. Wesley teams up with Inigo and Fezzik, forming an unlikely alliance. Inigo's personal mission to avenge his father's murder by the 6-fingered Count Rugen adds a subplot that is surprisingly emotional and deeply satisfying by the time it's resolved. The grandfather-grandson framing story occasionally interrupts the action. These breaks serve as commentary on the tale itself, sometimes humorous, sometimes heartfelt. At one point, the grandson protests the idea of anything too mushy, showing a typical child's resistance to romance. But as the story continues, even he is drawn in by the emotional depth and charm of the narrative. One of the most notable aspects of The Princess Bride is how it resonates with different age groups. Children enjoy the adventure, the giants, and the sword fights. Adults find layers of meaning in the relationships, the satire of fantasy cliches, and the clever writing. It's a story that grows with its audience, offering something new every time it's revisited. William Goldman, who both wrote the novel and adapted the screenplay, managed to create something rare, a fantasy film that feels timeless without being overly sentimental or outdated. The dialogue is sharp, memorable, and often quoted by fans. Phrases like, "as you wish," "inconceivable," and "hello, my name is Inigo Montoya. You killed my father, prepare to die," have become part of pop culture history. The tone of the film is balanced throughout. It's light-hearted without being shallow, sincere without being overly dramatic. The characters are written with care. Even the villains, such as Prince Humperdinck and Count Rugen, are given a sense of personality beyond just being obstacles. Meanwhile, side characters like Miracle Max and his wife Valerie add levity and charm in a way that feels natural to the world the film creates. From a visual standpoint, the film does a lot with its modest budget. The sets, though sometimes simple, are designed to serve the story. Whether it's the Cliffs of Insanity, the Fire Swamp, or the castle interiors, each location contributes to the fairy tale feel. The production design might not match the scale of modern fantasy epics, but it doesn't need to. What makes the film engaging is the characters, the writing, and the emotional core. Musically, The Princess Bride benefits from a score by Mark Knopfler that enhances the emotional rhythm of the story. The theme, Storybook Love, written by Willie DeVille and performed by Knopfler, was even nominated for an Academy Award. It captures the wistful tone of the film and plays a key role in tying everything together. What's especially interesting is how the story, though fictional and fantastical, keeps coming back to something very real. The love between people, not just romantic love, but also familiar love, friendship, and loyalty. These connections give the story its weight. When the grandson finally asks his grandfather to come back the next day and read the story again, it's a moment that quietly but powerfully shows how stories can build bonds between people. The grandfather's response, saying, "as you wish," isn't just a callback to the film's central romance. It's a way of saying, "I love you," without needing to explain it. That small detail gives the film a resonance that's hard to describe, but easy to feel. Over the years, The Princess Bride has become much more than a cult classic. It's taught in screenwriting courses, referenced in pop culture, and treasured by generations of fans. Part of what makes it so enduring is how honest it is about storytelling itself. It acknowledges the cliches and uses them anyway, not because it can't avoid them, but because it knows they still matter. A good story is still a good story, no matter how many times it's been told. When it came to casting Westley, the film's charming and witty hero, director Rob Reiner had a clear vision. He wanted someone who could pull off both the physical demands of sword fights and the comedic timing needed for the film's self-aware humour. Cary Elwes caught Reiner's attention after his performance in the historical drama Lady Jane. But at the time, Elwes was working on a film in West Germany. Rather than wait or move on, Reiner made the unusual decision to fly to Berlin to meet with him in person. This wasn't standard practice for casting a role, but Reiner was convinced Elwes was the right fit. After talking with him and confirming he was genuinely interested, the deal was made. From Elwes's perspective, landing the role of Westley was a dream come true. He had grown up loving the novel The Princess Bride, and the opportunity to play one of his favourite characters was something he never expected. The role demanded a blend of old-fashioned heroism, sly humour, and emotional depth. Elwes would later reflect that it was the kind of part any actor would be lucky to play, and he threw himself into it completely. The casting of Buttercup, Westley's true love, wasn't as straightforward. The production had already gone through several rounds of auditions, mostly with British actresses, but none seemed to capture the spirit of the character. Buttercup needed to be more than a damsel in distress. She had to be believable as someone who could inspire devotion, yet also stand strong in moments of crisis. Enter Robin Wright, a relatively unknown actress at the time. Her agency heard about the role and encouraged her to audition, even though she initially had doubts. When she arrived to read for the part, she made an immediate impression. Both Rob Reiner and casting director Jane Jenkins saw something special in her. She was invited to meet with William Goldman, the writer of both the novel and screenplay, and the moment felt almost cinematic itself. Wright showed up in a white summer dress, her hair glowing in the sunlight. Jenkins later said it was as if she had walked straight out of the script. Goldman reportedly looked at her and said, "Well, that's what I wrote," which sealed her place in the film. Other actresses had been considered, including some big names like Uma Thurman and Meg Ryan. Even Whoopi Goldberg expressed interest in the role. But once Wright auditioned, it was clear she was the right choice. Her natural elegance and quiet strength matched the tone of the character, and she quickly became an integral part of the cast. The chemistry between Elwes and Wright was immediately noticeable. They shared a comfort on screen that helped anchor the emotional core of the film. Whether they were acting out moments of longing, danger, or comedy, the connection between them helped give the story its heart. Another major casting challenge came with the character of Fezzik, the gentle giant. William Goldman had originally envisioned professional wrestler Andre the Giant for the part, but in the early stages of development, Andre's wrestling schedule made him unavailable. In the meantime, other large actors were considered. At one point, Arnold Schwarzenegger was viewed as a backup option. However, by the time filming was ready to begin, Schwarzenegger had become a star, and far too expensive for the production. Other names were explored, including basketball legend Kareem Abdul-Jabbar and bodybuilder-turned-actor Lou Ferrigno, but none seemed to fit the tone of the film the way Goldman had imagined. There was also some concern about Andre's acting ability and his strong French accent, which might be difficult for audiences to understand. On top of that, Andre was suffering from health issues due to acromegaly, a condition that caused his large size, but also came with pain and mobility challenges. He came to consult with Andre to help him out. Still, fate had its own plans. Andre's wrestling event in Tokyo was unexpectedly cancelled, freeing up his schedule just in time for filming. When he accepted the role of Fezzik, it felt like everything had come full circle. On set, Andre was treated with kindness and respect by the cast and crew. Despite his size and fame, he was known for his gentle nature and sense of humor. He brought something to the role that went beyond physical presence. Fezzik is a character full of warmth, innocence, and loyalty, and Andre captured that perfectly. His on-screen moments with Mandy Patinkin, who played Inigo Montoya, became some of the most endearing parts of the film. Behind the scenes, Andre found joy in the camaraderie of the cast and the welcoming atmosphere. For him, acting in The Princess Bride was more than just a job. It was a rare chance to be seen for who he was, not just his appearance. The casting process also revealed how flexible and intuitive the production team was. Rob Reiner and Jane Jenkins were willing to go the extra mile to get the right actors. Whether it meant flying to another country, re-auditioning dozens of candidates, or taking a chance on someone with limited acting experience, they consistently made choices that served the story. Once filming began, the chemistry between the cast members helped elevate the material. Elwes and Wright had an easy connection, and both were committed to their roles in a way that often went beyond what was expected. In one famous incident, Elwes broke his toe during filming after crashing Andre's all-terrain vehicle. Despite the injury, he continued working, carefully adjusting how he moved on set to avoid putting pressure on his foot. He wore a splint and often chose to sit or lean in scenes that allowed it, masking the pain with subtle shifts in body language. Director Rob Reiner didn't immediately realize what had happened. When he first saw Elwes's adjusted posture and gentle movements, he assumed it was a creative choice, something Elwes was doing to show Wesley's elegance and calmness. Only later did he learn that the performance was shaped partly by necessity. The crew had to work around the injury, rearranging shots and choreography as needed, but Elwes's professionalism meant the production never lost momentum. His injury wasn't the only behind-the-scenes story of commitment. The final scene between Wesley and Buttercup, where they share a heartfelt kiss, turned out to be the last day of shooting for Elwes and Wright. While Rob Reiner was satisfied with the first take, the actors weren't ready to let go. Caught up in the moment and the emotions of wrapping the film, they asked to do several more takes, not out of perfectionism, but because they didn't want it to end. The result was 6 different takes, each one filled with genuine emotion. For Elwes, it was a bittersweet moment. Even though the film was ending, a part of him wasn't ready to say goodbye to the character or the experience. The connection between the cast wasn't just on screen. Many of the actors have spoken about the strong sense of community during filming. Whether it was the daily rehearsals, long hours on set, or shared meals after shooting, the environment fostered mutual respect and collaboration. That sense of closeness helped build a performance that felt lived in and authentic. One of the most talked about scenes in the film takes place in the fire swamp. It's a sequence that combines visual effects, practical stunts, and a fair amount of tension. Buttercup and Wesley make their way through a dangerous landscape that includes quicksand, bursts of flame, and the rodents of unusual size. It's meant to be a moment of adventure and peril, and it's shot with a mix of humor and suspense. But behind the scenes, things didn't go entirely as planned. On the first day of production, the cast and crew were filming in this artificial swamp, which had been carefully constructed on a soundstage. Everything was prepped, and safety measures were in place, especially because fire effects were involved. Robin Wright, who played Buttercup, was wearing a specially treated costume designed to be fire-resistant. She was also outfitted with layers of protective material underneath, and had a crew member standing by with a fire extinguisher. Despite all the preparation, a moment came when her dress caught fire for real. For a split second, panic took over. The team knew it was supposed to happen as part of the scene, but not like this. The situation became even more tense when author William Goldman, who was visiting the set, yelled out in fear during the take. His reaction was instinctive. He saw what looked like a dangerous accident and couldn't stay silent. His outburst disrupted the scene, prompting director Rob Reiner to call cut and calm everyone down. He reminded Goldman, in a now famous moment of behind-the-scenes levity, that the fire was supposed to happen. It had been carefully planned. The tension turned into laughter once it was clear Wright was unharmed and everything was under control. The moment became one of many examples of how unpredictable filming can be, even with every safety protocol in place. It also highlighted the tight-knit atmosphere of the crew, where everyone looked out for each other. Other on-set challenges were more internal. Wallace Shawn, who played Vizzini, brought a lot of humour to the film with his fast-talking, overconfident character. However, Shawn later admitted that he spent most of the shoot feeling anxious. He had heard that Danny DeVito was originally the top choice for the role and believed he was just a temporary replacement. This left him feeling insecure, convinced that he might be let go at any moment if DeVito became available. Shawn's nervousness carried into his performance. He compared himself unfavourably to what he imagined DeVito would have done with the role. The self-doubt stuck with him, even though the rest of the team never saw him as anything but the right choice. Rob Reiner later confirmed that Shawn's take on Vizzini was exactly what the film needed. His delivery of the word "inconceivable" alone became one of the movie's most iconic lines, proving that his performance had more impact than he realized at the time. Perhaps the most physically demanding part of the film was the sword fight between Wesley and Inigo Montoya. The duel, which takes place on the cliffs of Insanity, is often cited as one of the best choreographed sword fights in film history. But it didn't happen overnight. Actors Cary Elwes and Mandy Patinkin trained for months under the guidance of renowned fencing experts Bob Anderson and Peter Diamond. Both trainers had extensive experience in film, with Anderson having worked on Star Wars and The Lord of the Rings. Rehearsals were intense. Elwes and Patinkin learnt both left and right-handed techniques, as their characters switch hands mid-fight in the film. They practiced the sequence over and over, determined to perform the entire fight themselves without stunt doubles. By the time they showed their work to Rob Reiner, they had the entire routine down perfectly, but a little too perfectly. Reiner's reaction to the first complete run-through wasn't what they expected. The fight had been rehearsed to the point where it was executed so quickly that the entire sequence lasted barely a minute. Reiner scratched his beard, looked at the team, and simply asked, "That's it?" He wanted something bigger and more cinematic, so the actors went back with Anderson and Diamond to extend the choreography, adding more swings, flips, and dramatic pauses. The final version of the fight is longer, more intense, and visually dynamic, exactly the kind of moment that audiences remember. That fight wasn't without its own risks. Elwes was still recovering from the broken toe he had suffered earlier while driving Andre the Giant's all-terrain vehicle on set. He hid the injury for as long as he could, but eventually Reiner found out. The crew adjusted shooting to accommodate his condition, often framing shots to avoid full-body movement. During sword fight rehearsals, Elwes focused more on upper body actions, relying less on footwork than he had initially planned. Despite the pain, he pushed through, determined not to let the injury affect the final product. Pain and discomfort were, unfortunately, common on set, especially for Andre the Giant. While playing the lovable Fezzik, Andre dealt with ongoing health problems. His acromegaly had caused severe physical strain, and simple tasks like walking or lifting his co-stars were more difficult than they appeared. During one scene, where Fezzik is supposed to catch Buttercup as she jumps from a window, a stunt double was used for the catch. Andre couldn't safely perform the stunt due to his back pain. He coped with his condition the only way he knew how, by drinking. Elwes later wrote about Andre's legendary drinking abilities, noting that he would drink beer out of massive pitchers he called the American. These weren't small mugs, each one held about 40 ounces. Despite his drinking, Andre remained kind, patient, and gentle with everyone on set. The cast and crew treated him with affection and respect, recognizing both his physical challenges and his contribution to the film's unique energy. Billy Crystal's role as Miracle Max added another layer of complexity to the production, mainly because he was so funny that no one could stay in character around him. His scene with the mostly dead Wesley is one of the funniest in the film, largely thanks to Crystal's improvisation. He based his character on a blend of his grandmother and a New York Yankees manager named Casey Stengel, creating a look and voice that were instantly memorable. Crystal was given a lot of freedom to improvise, and he used it fully. His quick one-liners and sarcastic delivery caused frequent outbursts of laughter on set. At one point, Rob Reiner had to leave the room during shooting because he was laughing so hard he felt physically sick. Mandy Patinkin, despite being a professional and committed actor, couldn't keep a straight face either. He laughed so forcefully during takes that he ended up bruising a rib, making Crystal's performance not just the funniest, but also the only one to cause an actual injury on set. Carrie Elwes had to lie completely still for that scene, pretending to be unconscious, while Crystal and Carol Kane, playing Valerie, performed around him. Keeping a straight face proved almost impossible. The problem got so bad that the crew eventually used a dummy for some of the shots to avoid further delays. These behind-the-scenes stories highlight how much energy, care, and spontaneity went into the making of The Princess Bride. It wasn't a massive production with endless resources. In fact, its budget was modest by Hollywood standards. But the combination of talent, dedication, and sheer love for the story resulted in moments that still resonate with audiences today. Originally, author William Goldman had imagined a slightly more surreal conclusion. In his version, the story ended with the grandson, now grown, meeting the characters from the book in real life. The idea was to blur the line between fiction and reality, and to suggest that the world of Florin existed beyond the pages of a book. It was a bold concept, one that would have taken the story in a much more fantastical direction. However, the filmmakers ultimately decided against it. Instead, they opted for a quieter, more grounded ending. After the grandfather finishes reading the story, the grandson, who had started the film with mild annoyance about being read to, asks his grandfather to come back the next day and read it again. It's a simple moment, but one that lands with genuine emotional weight. The grandfather's reply, "As you wish," echoes the romantic heart of the story, showing that those 3 words mean something just as deep in a family context as they do in a love story. For actor Cary Elwes, the decision to stay with this version of the ending was the right one. Looking back, he admitted he wasn't entirely sure why the more elaborate finale was scrapped, but he believed it helped preserve the emotional integrity of the film. Sometimes, he explained, the best choices in filmmaking are the ones that stay true to the story's spirit, rather than chasing bigger visuals or twists. That sense of restraint, of knowing when to keep things simple, is part of why The Princess Bride has had such a lasting impact. When the film was first released in 1987, it wasn't an immediate box office hit. It performed respectably, bringing in around $30 million, 0 cents in the United States, and Canada on a $16 million, 0 cents budget. But it wasn't a runaway success. What happened next, though, was more important. Thanks to home video and cable television, the film found a second life. Word of mouth grew steadily. People who had missed it in theaters discovered it on VHS, showed it to their friends, and shared it with their children. The film's tone, which had seemed a bit unusual in a theatrical setting, too sincere to be satire, too funny to be a straightforward fairy tale, was suddenly its biggest strength. Passepartout was suddenly its biggest strength. It didn't belong to one genre, and that made it feel timeless. Critics were quick to pick up on this. On Rotten Tomatoes, the film holds an approval rating of 98%, with reviewers calling it a smart, self-aware fairy tale that works for all ages. The blend of swordplay, romance, comedy, and fantasy made it hard to classify, but easy to love. Audiences responded similarly. On CinemaScore, where viewers rate films as they leave the theatre, The Princess Bride received a rare A+ rating. Over the years, the film began to pick up formal recognition as well. At the 60th Academy Awards, it was nominated for Best Original Song for Storybook Love. It also won several genre-specific honours, including a Hugo Award for Best Dramatic Presentation and a Saturn Award for Best Fantasy Film. Robin Wright was nominated for her role as Best Actress, and the film was acknowledged for its costume design and screenplay. What's more impressive, though, is how The Princess Bride moved beyond awards to become a genuine part of pop culture. Quotes from the film are still repeated decades later. Lines like "As you wish," "Inconceivable," and "You killed my father, prepare to die," have entered the public imagination in ways few other films can claim. These aren't just famous lines. They've become emotional triggers for fans, instantly recalling entire scenes and feelings. Even the film's structure has influenced how other stories are told. The idea of embedding a narrative within a narrative, the grandfather reading to the grandson while the fairy tale plays out, has inspired countless writers and filmmakers. It's a device that adds perspective without taking away from the story itself. It also allows for humour that plays off of the viewer's expectations. When the grandson interrupts to complain about the kissing parts or asks if the hero dies, it echoes what the audience might be thinking, creating a shared experience. Over time, the people involved with the film have reflected on its unexpected popularity. Cary Elwes in particular has spoken about how fans often approach him not just with compliments, but with personal stories about what the film has meant to them. He's described moments where viewers told him it was the first film they ever saw, or one they watched with a parent who has since passed away. That emotional connection goes far beyond entertainment. It speaks to the film's ability to become a part of people's lives. Robin Wright has had similar experiences. Despite her long and varied career, The Princess Bride remains one of the roles she's most recognized for. In interviews, she's said that being part of the film is something she's proud of, not just because of its success, but because of how much it continues to mean to new generations. The anniversary screenings of the film have also shown how it has aged. On its 30th anniversary, special events were held across the United States and beyond. Fans came dressed as their favorite characters, and theaters were filled with laughter, cheers, and sometimes even tears. It's the kind of legacy most films only dream of, one built not on hype or marketing, but on authenticity. In an age where many films are quickly forgotten, The Princess Bride continues to endure. Part of that is due to its universal themes: love, friendship, revenge, and bravery, but much of it comes from its sincerity. It's a film that never winks too hard at the audience, never undermines its own message. It's clever without being cynical, heartfelt without being overly sentimental. And because of that, it continues to find new fans, even among those who weren't born when it was released. Another factor in its lasting appeal is the way it embraces imagination. The world of Florin isn't overly complicated or filled with detailed lore. It's just believable enough to work. The simplicity of the setting allows the characters and relationships to take center stage. You don't need to understand a complex mythology to care about what's happening. You just need to believe that true love and friendship can conquer obstacles, no matter how absurd or dramatic they may be. The film has also been preserved in the US National Film Registry by the Library of Congress, a designation given to films deemed culturally, historically, or aesthetically significant. This official recognition ensures that The Princess Bride will be archived for future generations to discover and enjoy. Even the cast and crew have stayed close, often reuniting for interviews, events, and even virtual table reads. Their shared affection for the project mirrors that of the fans. They understand that they were part of something rare, not just a successful movie, but a meaningful one. Looking at all of this, it's clear that The Princess Bride has gone far beyond what anyone could have predicted when it was released. Its modest success in 1987 was just the beginning. Today, it's studied, quoted, shared, and cherished around the world. It's more than a film. It's a piece of storytelling history that continues to remind audiences why we tell stories in the first place.